Yes, I can.
Okay, all right. Okay, hello everyone, and thanks for joining. As Ashley said, we're going to spend the next 45 to 60 minutes talking about Dynamics GP. This is version 2016 R2, so this is current shipping product. If you own the product, this is the current version. If you don't own it, this is what you would buy if you were buying it today. And as she mentioned, we're going to specifically talk about inventory, sales order processing, which sometimes we call SOP, S-O-P, sales order processing, and then the flip side of that, POP, purchase order processing, and really kind of focus our discussion today kind of around those three modules and how they work together. Everything is based off of the inventory system, and so, and this is assuming that you're selling product. Of course, you could sell things that are not product. You don't have to use inventory, and that's not at all required with Dynamics GP, but most people kind of in the supply chain area do have inventory set up. But you could sell things and just free form, type whatever you want on the lines for the order or the invoice, or if you were to do a quote, you don't have to reference back the particular inventory items. But we're going to assume today that we'll be using the Dynamics inventory system. And so I'm going to, what you're seeing here is my home page, and I'm going to kind of move off of my home page over into the inventory area. And so when I do that, everything to do with inventory is pulled onto my inventory page. I should note that I'm logged in as the system administrator today, and so as the system admin, I don't have any security restrictions. Every single thing is unlocked. I can go and do and print and look at and so forth, anything and everything. So keep in mind that there are ways, of course, to secure things down to your own liking, and not everybody has to kind of see and do everything in the system. So in the inventory system here, we're going to focus mostly on the cards, and cards you might know if you've seen the system or used it at all. Cards are kind of our master records. This is kind of where we do our setup. So customers, vendors, account numbers like GL accounts, inventory items, employees if we're using payroll or HR, those all happen in the cards, or kind of the master record area. And so you'll notice I've changed the focus of my screen to cards, and I'm doing that just because we got a lot of other things going on here. And of course, some of you may know you can rearrange the screen to your own liking, and you're not Microsoft isn't dictating kind of how the system should look and feel, but we're going to spend a lot of time, at least up front here, in cards. So I just clicked on the icon there that kind of tucks everything off to the right. And if you like it over on the left or down at the bottom, that's perfectly okay. I just have mine going off to the right there. So just a little navigation update there. And so we're going to look at our item setup. And you see here a screen that's empty right now. You should probably see some colors on it. The red lines and fields are required. And so if I'm going to actually do something with this window, if I'm going to save this window and make it part of my system, I'm going to have to tell Dynamics GP those things in red. So in this case, there's only 3. When we get over to selling products, you'll see that there's a lot more requirements. But on inventory, it's just these 3 items. And so, of course, we could look an item up with the looking glass here, and that opens a list of items. I've got my item number, which I used kind of alphanumeric just as an option. I've got a shorter description. I can come over here and find maybe more of my full description. And so, of course, there's lots of other sorts here that we can look for things. We could actually do a custom sort, and everything that we have security to or access to in the database is then made available as far as inventory. And so if I wanted to look something up by the current cost, for example, if that would ever make sense. And so I can pull that onto the window. I left my item type on there, but anything that I might be looking for would be easily found here in the system. And so I happen to know the item I want to bring up, and so I'm just going to start typing it. And you'll notice when I hit the 2 key, a list of items that begin with the digit 2 come up. But then as I type more, you'll see it limits the list to really just the only item I have that starts with 2G. And so this is just a computer component. We're not particularly concerned about that, but just so I have some data here that populates into the window, we'll see, I've got an item type. Of course, I could use this for services. So if I have labor that I'm putting on an invoice or an order to a customer, I can set labor up equally as easy as I can set a product up. I could have a kit where I have, if you think about a flower shop, where you could buy the individual items, so you could go in and buy the flowers, you could buy a basket and a card or something like that, or you could have the flower shop deliver that as a bundle or as a kit. And so in Dynamics GP we refer to that as a kit, and all we're doing there is pulling individual items together kind of on the fly and building up a kit and then selling the kit item as a whole instead of the individual components. And of course we can discontinue items, so if something is no longer sold or should be sold, we can mark it discontinued, and we don't want to lose track of it, but we're not actively selling it. And so then we get into kind of the taxing, and so sales tax. Some folks that sell product have to collect sales tax, and so here we've got a couple of choices. We can make our items non-taxable, so if we have something in the system that is clearly not going to be taxed, we can flag it that way. The opposite is true if it's always taxed, so regardless of what, the item is always going to be sales tax. We can force it to be taxable. What most people do is base it on the customer. So if I've got a customer that's taxable, then my item becomes taxable when that customer buys it. If I have a customer that's not taxable, maybe it's a government or other nonprofit that we have a sales tax exemption certificate on file for, then the software will look to, when that customer is part of the order, they'll look to the customer account and see that, oh, they're not taxable, so the item's not taxable. But the next order I do, the customer might be taxable, and so then the item becomes taxable. And so pretty easy to navigate through the taxes here. And same thing on the purchasing side. Not everybody uses this piece, but this is when we buy the item. If we always pay tax on it or we never pay tax on it, this is what some states would refer to as use tax, and so we're not necessarily paying a sales tax, although that's really what it is, but most places call it a use tax, where when we acquire something, if our vendor for some reason doesn't charge us, we can tax ourselves and then send that tax in every month along with our regular sales tax return. And then the unit of measure, which you see is red, so fairly important. I've got this set up as individual, and so each, but you see I have a number of unit of measure schedules in here. And I did mention labor before, so I do have a schedule for labor. So if I was setting up a labor item, of course we're not going to track quantity on labor. We're not going to try to go see if we have labor on the shelf and we have quantity to sell it. No, it's going to be set up as a service item or a fee, and that tells the software don't try to track a quantity. Just use the item card and the unit of measure and the price schedule and so forth to deliver consistency out to the sales system. I've got one set up for mileage, so we could put, if we had a service charge or a trip charge, and maybe we charge so much a mile to deliver something, or visit a customer site for a delivery, whatever it might be in that case, we can set that up as well. And so lots of options and choices for unit of measure schedules. I'm using mine as individuals here. Now sometimes people will ask, well, can I have multiple units of measure on the same schedule? Well, yes. And here for the one I'm using, of course each is the lowest unit of measure I would buy and sell this product in, but it looks like here I could sell it in case lots, and so somebody could buy a case of these or individually buy a processor. And a case in this situation is 10 individuals, and so you can create a number of conversions there. And so if you do things, let's see, I think on my wire I've got, yeah, so if I look at my wire unit of measure schedule, I transact wire in feet. That's kind of the basic unit of measure. I also could buy it or sell it in yards or by the spool. And so any of those are fair game when it comes to entering orders or purchase orders, so customer orders or vendor POs. I can use any of those unit of measure designations, and based on that conversion, then the system knows how much quantity to pull out of the inventory or that's coming into the inventory if I'm on the buying side. And so pretty simple setup for the most part. We do have some options here, so when we look at that, we have the ability to put in some substitute items, not too many, but there's room for 2. And so if you're out of stock on this product, the system would actually allow you then to, well, it would make a suggestion of a substitute. And so some things are generic enough that you know, you could substitute over. Other things like sizes, like clothing sizes, typically you're not substituting that. You know, if you go into the store and you wear a size medium, and we don't have any mediums, but we have small and large, well, most of the time that's not really an option. So, you know, depends on your product if substitutes are valid or not, but system handles that. It also tracks serial and lot numbers, and so we can do things with serialized items, and lot numbered items are typically used in the food and beverage business. So when you're dealing with perishable products, most all those have a lot number, and that's how we can keep track of if we have to do a recall or something to that effect. And so warranty days, you know, you don't see any red here, and so the red things are required, remember. So there's nothing at all required here, and some people use all of this, some people use pieces of it, and some use none of it. And so other things, these are user-defined categories over here on the right, and so I've labeled 3 of them, and then the other 3 I just haven't figured out a label yet to put on there. But here, if I wanted to pick, you know, like features, or if I had certain styles and so forth that I might want to kind of designate for this item, I have that ability as well. And so think about anything that I put in the system, anything I want to take the time to add to one of the windows, I can report on. And so that's why we might do that, is we can then run reports later on a particular item. And so the accounts area is really just, that's the behind the scenes where the general ledger, kind of the hardcore accounting is happening. And so where we know the inventory accounts and our sales accounts, and if we have returns and so forth, you'll see not all these are used, not all these are required. And of course you want to use the ones that make sense, like inventory and sales and cost of goods and so forth if you're selling product. But if you don't get into variances and purchase price variances, if you don't use any of that, then of course you don't need accounts for those things. So that's just kind of where the GL work is happening. And then I have the ability to suggest items. And so, you know, you've all kind of had this happen to you, I'm sure. This is the kind of, do you want fries with that? And so when you order, you know, the hamburger, they try to upsell you with the fries, or do you want a drink with that? And so this is Dynamics GP's way of having you designate some upsell type items. So suggested items is a softer term for it. And so we could put in here, you know, if we bought a base unit of something, you might try to sell some accessories. And so this is helpful if you're on the phone taking orders. And, you know, if you're getting an email or fax, the suggested items aren't going to do you any good if you're not talking to the person kind of real time, although I guess you could always email them and say, hey, do you want fries with that? Or do you want the, you know, the accessory? Do you want the case or the screen protector or whatever it might be? And so this is just a spot for us to fill these in, and then have the system prompt the user for suggested items if we decide to use that. And so the ribbon across the top, you see, kind of looks a lot like Microsoft Office, and so that's by design. So the idea is that you could transition fairly easy from Office over into Dynamics GP, and although they do completely different things, you know, it's Microsoft, and so they want the same look and feel in the accounting or the ERP system is what they have in Office. Just because so many people use Office, it's so easy to present something that's very similar and then cut down on the learning and the navigation. And so here, for this particular item, you'll notice I've got an attach button and a little paper clip with the paper, so that tells me there's something back there. And it's going to go check and see if my scanner's out there, which it is today. And so here I could scan directly into this window if I wanted to bring some documentation in. But you'll notice I have a PDF assigned to this item. And so that's going to be important when we get over to the selling side. But I can attach any number of documents here in any electronic form. There's really no restriction at all on what we can actually bring in. And so, you know, if you think about on a customer, you might have a contract, or on an order, you might actually want to scan in a customer's order or special instructions and so forth. And so there's really no limit on what you can do with the document attached there. And then finally, the go-to button is probably the next important one here. This is where all of our pricing happens, kind of how we price the item out. And so we've got several options here on how we figure out how the system should generate a selling price for us. I just have one price here in my list, but the little tree view over here will navigate through. So, you know, you can imagine if you had 50 or 100 or several hundred price levels that, you know, you might be kind of difficult to scroll through and find exactly what you want. So the little tree kind of view over here on the left makes it very quick to get into the pricing model here. And so everything for this particular item is going out at a retail price for each. Now remember, I had cases available. I could have a case price, and many people do that. You can have quantity breaks. Here I've got it set to all, but I could turn that off, and then the quantity, the start and the end quantity here. So if I wanted to say from 1 to 10, the price is one thing. From 11 to 20, it's something else. If you buy more than 20, it's even less. And so room for unlimited price levels on any item that you have in the system, and so that's usually an important thing, and how we get pricing out to the order side. And then we have the locations that this item resides at, and so you'll see it is flagged all. So this is all of my warehouse locations, and we can see over here that I have 20 of these items on hand. I have 2 that are allocated. Now allocated means that I've got orders out there already, so you know, mathematically I don't want to sell those 2 to somebody else because I need them for an order that's in the system. And so mathematically I only have 18 that we would say really would be available here for sale. And so, you know, sometimes you say, well, 2, who's wanting 2? Well, the blue underlines are the drill downs, so that means we can drill back into the data here. And so I can see that there's order 2283. And sure enough, I can expand this window a little bit and see a little bit more detail. But sure enough, there's 2 that that this customer has pending here on this order. And so actually that's an invoice, INV. And so now I could drill down on that document and take a look at that invoice. So that invoice isn't posted yet. It's sitting out there in a batch, and the batch happens to have my initials on it. And so someday that'll get posted. Well, then the 2 won't be allocated. It'll actually come out of the 20, and the 20 will reduce down to 18. But until the invoice is posted, we kind of hold that in an allocation of the item, because you know this could change. It's not posted sitting in a batch, and it might change before it becomes final. Okay, so let's see, maybe just a couple of more of these. Purchasing, we tell the system how we want to buy. So I know my base unit of measure is individual, so it's eaches. I could purchase in cases, and so, you know, a lot of distributors do that. They buy in bulk and then sell in smaller quantities, and that's a typical scenario here where maybe my default purchasing unit of measure becomes the case, but my carrying unit of measure and my selling unit of measure becomes more the individual. And so there's room for tolerance percentages here. So when we're receiving product in, we could set a tolerance. So if either the quantity or the value, the dollar amount, vary from what was on our purchase order, if it was within our tolerance, we would just go ahead and accept that transaction. But if it's outside of the tolerance, then the system would stop us, or at least give us a message if we prefer. And then here we kind of link the items to the vendors. So where do we buy this particular item? So I'm going to flip over to my assigned vendors, and then when I click on the lookup, oh, I've only got one, and so apparently this is the only vendor that I buy this a particular item from. And of course the vendor can have their own item number and their own description that may or may not be what our stock keeping unit is referred to as, you know, in our system. And so in fact we see that we're using the same item number, but my description in my system is slightly different from my vendor's description. So, well, why do we do that? So when we do a purchase order, we grab the vendor's item and the vendor's description and put it on our purchase order to the vendor, so that way they know exactly what we want. And you know, they don't care what we call it and how we number it, and vice versa, but we have to make that link there, and so that's what we're seeing here. And then just when we're dealing with this vendor and this particular item, then we have some parameters. If this vendor has a minimum order quantity, if we want to set a maximum order quantity, so we would never even accidentally order more than a certain quantity. If there's an economic order quantity where that's kind of the best deal, so to speak, taking into consideration all things, the shipping and storage costs and so forth. Not a whole lot of people use that, but we do see that a lot in manufacturing where there's a economic order quantity, or EOQ as it's called. And then the default purchasing unit of measure, which again we said could be eaches or cases for the vendor. And then the last time we bought this item from this vendor, this is how much we paid. And so the system's just storing that because it's going to use that for our purchase order, because it assumes that if that's the last time we bought the item, that's probably how much it cost. Of course, we can always type over that when we get to the PO if we know the price has gone up or down, if that's possible. And then lastly is just kind of how we want the purchasing system to respond. And so again, I'll flip over to my my main warehouse where we have our quantity here, and I have room for a buyer. So if I have a purchasing agent in the warehouse or assigned to this warehouse, I can put that person in. You'll see it's not red, so it's not required, but that will print off on the PO if I so choose. And then we have our order policy, and so I'm telling the system that I want to use what's called the PIO Generator. So that's a module in the software we'll look at in a couple of minutes. And if I don't want the PIO Generator to ever look at my stock and try to figure out what I should buy, I could leave it or set it to not planned, which means the PIO Generator is just going to skip it. I don't want any help trying to figure out what to do with this item as far as ordering. But I do have mine set to be planned, and so when I do, then these fields down here light up, the order point quantity and then the order up to level. Well, the order point quantity is really the stock level at which Dynamics GP will suggest a buy. And so, if the quantity on hand or the quantity available drops below this order point quantity, in this case 50, if it drops below that and I ask the purchasing system to help me figure out what I should buy, it will consider that this needs to be looked at. If I have 50 or above 50, I should say, then the PIO Generator will skip this and say, well, you have plenty based on your order point quantity, so I don't need to consider that. So my quantity is 20 on hand, and remember I had 2 allocated, so I really only have 18 I can sell. And so well within the 50, so PIO Generator should pick this item up and suggest that we probably need something. And so then what happens is the purchasing system looks at the order up to level, and so we have this set at 75, and so remember we had 20 on hand, 2 allocated, so I only have 18 that I could sell. So the PO system is going to say, okay, well, we want to order up to 75, so in other words, we want to have 75 on hand, and I have 18 that I can sell. So really the PIO Generator then at this point should suggest a quantity of 57 to get me up to my 75. Now, I can override all that, which we'll see here in a minute, and so I don't have to live with what the PIO system suggests. It's just that. It's a suggestion, and so we can still decide kind of how things should work. Okay, so now we're moving over into the sales system, and I've opened my order entry window here, and a lot more busy. So because a lot of things are happening in order entry, a lot more required fields with the red. And so as you would expect, I'm going to enter an order, but you'll notice here that I can enter orders. Well, I could go back to quotes, I could enter orders, fulfillment orders, invoices, returns, and back orders all kind of happen in the same window. So that way you're not going back and forth between different windows based on the transaction that you're trying to enter, and you only have to learn one window for all of the selling type transactions. So I'm going to enter an order. Actually, I think I have one out here. So I put an order in already for this particular customer. And so let me just kind of walk through it so you can see what happens. It assigns the next order number. I pick a customer, whoever that might be, and it fills in my address information, today's date, which I have my system date kind of set back here to April. It assumes I want to put this order in the same batch that I've been working on. And if the customer had a PO number that I was referencing, I could put that in there. Of course, all my currencies in US dollars today. And then I just start typing the different line items here. So as I type my 2G, there's the item that we've been looking at. If I'm looking for something with 100, maybe I have no clue if I know it starts with W, but it's not really listed there, so I can hit W and then click on the lookup, and it shows me all the W's that are actually in my item, kind of my stock file here. And so, I can grab the one I want and then proceed on with the order. Now remember, this has a selling unit of measure of foot. Well, I said I could sell that in yards or spools as well, and so you'll notice the pricing change. It's not $190 a foot, but it's $190 a spool. And so when I back it off to foot, you see it's only 35 cents a foot. And so, that's how that unit of measure works on the selling and the buying side, exactly the same. And so I'm going to just get rid of this one. So I'm going to delete this document, and we're going to go back to the one that I have, oops, not that one, the one that I have pre-filled out. And so we can take a look at some of these things that are happening here. And so same information at the top. I pulled on a couple items, and there's my 2G proc, and I ordered 20 of these. Now if I do one, you'll see it floats right through there because I had 18 available, and so plenty in stock. But when I change that to 20, remember I have 20 on the shelf, but 2 are sitting on another order. So right now, if I do 20, I'm going to be 2 more than what I have available. So when I ask for 20, the system says, okay, tell me what you want to do. Now, in your setup, you can actually decide what the system should do and not stop at this window. So if you want everybody to kind of, answer this question the same way, you can put that in so it just sails right on by. But I have it stopping here so you can see it. Well, you see that I do have the 18 available, and I'm asking for 20, and so Dynamics GP is saying, what do you want to do? Well, I could sell the balance, which means sell the 18 and forget the 2. I could override it, which means sell the 20 and don't worry about how you're going to fill it, just sell it and move on. That might be okay. I could back order everything. So if this customer says, I only want complete shipments, don't send me pieces, we might back order the entire thing, all 20. I could back order the balance, which would fulfill 18 and then put 2 on back order, which would be okay if the customer was okay with partial shipments. Or hopefully you don't have to do this where you just cancel the whole order. They say if you don't have it, I don't want any. Hopefully that's not the case. Or distribute means that I can look at other inventory warehouses. So if I have 20 locations around the country, and I can distribute, which means I can pull from any other warehouse Even though I'm selling kind of out of my main warehouse location, I could look at any other site that I might have in the system and see, do I have any quantity out there, and then ship from another warehouse. So I might take all 18 here and then go get 2 from the Miami warehouse, and then I accommodate what my customer wants here. I'm going to go ahead and just back order the entire thing, and so we're going to back order the whole balance. And so what happens kind of behind the scenes here is I'm just showing a little bit more information now on this particular line item. I can see that I'm not actually ready to invoice or fill anything because of the question I just answered. All of the 20 is going on back order. And so that's fine. So our first item here, the 100 XLG, well, I only needed 1 of those and I had 1 in stock, and so it automatically fulfilled that. So I'm good on that. That's no problem there. And so from here now, a couple of things happened behind the scenes, and you'll notice my attach button up here. When I click on this, this actually looks to see, are there any documents that I have flagged to flow or to move from the customer over to the order. And so here's 2 documents that actually came into the order, and of course I can preview these. So that opened on my other screen. So there's the PDF, and this one, I'm not sure what we're going to get. So it's a copy of a GL account for something, so out of another company, test company. And so probably wouldn't be sending that necessarily, but you kind of get the idea. Of course, you could scan into this, so you could put something directly into the order, and or if you had something out on the C drive, for example, you know, you could go grab that and attach that to the order. And so that's perfectly okay. But when I set my customer up here, we'll drill back to the customer here just for a minute. And so here's the attach paperclip for the customer. And you'll see now that these 2 documents, this our own terms and conditions and this GL 307, those were set on the customer card, on the maintenance card, and you'll see the check boxes over here. This one is the allow document flow. So that means every time you do an order or an invoice for this customer, the documents that are in the customer maintenance, that are on the customer's permanent record, those documents, if it's 1 or 1,000, those are going to flow over to every order that we put into the system. Now, I could uncheck one of these if I just wanted the other one to flow, so I have them both set to move over to my orders. And then the next button here is email, and so that tells the software that I not only want the documents to flow over to my order and my invoice when I have this customer active, but I also want to email these documents. I want you to send these out in an email along with the sales documents, whether it's an order or an invoice or quote or whatever it might be. And so that's how we can get customer, you know, we might have return instructions, we might have some pricing documents we're referencing and so forth. And so all that can be sent over to the order, so we don't have to redo all that. We set it up once on the customer card, and then we have access to it on the order itself. Well, that's good for the customer, but what about my items? And so we see when we highlight one of my items, I also have the little attachment clip here, and I can do the same thing. I can open this. Well, here we have this is a 100 XLG green phone, and we have an image of the phone that actually comes over into the order. And so hopefully none of you have one of those today, but might have been popular someday. And so this allows us to have documents onto the item card, and those documents actually then flow over to the transaction as well. And so if I drill down onto this item and go back into where this item is set up, and I go to my attach, we'll see that green phone JPEG image as soon as it checks for my scanner. So there's where the image is set up, and that, because I do have that set to flow over to the sales side, so you see the check boxes. and also the email. So that means that anything from the item can go over to the customer order. And this could be assembly instructions. It could be, you know, if you're doing a return, you could have return instructions for a particular item or for the customer. And so really up to you, up to your imagination on if there's things that you would like documented electronically and then one time put into the system and then used throughout. And so I have 2 documents, one for each line item, and I have 2 documents for my customer. Well, I added a 5th. So I actually have a total of 5 documents that I want to send out to this customer. And so once I get my order built, and of course, you know, the credit is checked and so forth, and make sure they're not delinquent, and you know, I can stop a user from putting an order in. If a customer is delinquent, I could put up a message just so they know, but not stop them. That could allow them to continue to process the order into an invoice, but all is well here. And so we'll go ahead and just print this order off, and we're just going to print it off to the screen right now. And I have mine set to print using Microsoft Word, and so there it is. And so here's order 2236 with the 2 items on it. Quantity of 1, quantity of 20, but see this quantity of 20 is back ordered because that's what I told it to do. And so, but the order is totaled up, and this is just an out-of-the-box Word template. I've dropped a logo on it, one that I happen to have handy, but you know, this can be edited to your own liking. This is just the way Microsoft built it, but obviously all these reports can be changed up to pretty much anything you want. And so let's go back to my document here. And so that's good, that looks good. A lot of times you don't need to print it if you're going to email it. But before I email it, I want to see the attachments that I'm going to send. All 5 of those attachments now, the 2 line items and the 3 from the customer card, are all available to email. And so I can come into this window and I can decide, you know, that thing I attached, which you saw me attach, I don't really, I don't need that to go. That's just something more internal. But what I do want to send to my customer with the order is my terms sheet, and I want to send them an image of the green phone, and this looks like a PowerPoint or something we did, so this is not an image of the G or 2G proc, but I know I've got the image of the green phone because you saw that. So a total of 5 attachments. I'm going to have 3 of them actually go out to the customer. And so once I check that and make any edits that I need to, then I can go ahead and email this, and you'll see that it's generating the email. And as soon as that comes in here, there it is. And so you should be able to see my email over here. And so here's the invoice now. And so we saw this printed to the screen. So there's my order, not my invoice, but so there's my order, just like we printed to the screen, been emailed out to the customer. Of course, I have it sent out to myself so you can see it. There's the terms and conditions that I said I did want to include in the package. There's an image of the green phone for whatever that's worth. And then here's the other little thing, which I think, yeah, it looks like a PDF that I had done, or a PowerPoint that I had converted to PDF. But so you kind of get the idea that, you know, as long as you don't have any limits on doc sizes and stuff, Dynamics GP will send all of those individual documents out, and then I just have a simple message here, but these can be, you know, whatever you like and customized to your own liking and so on, as far as, you know, who's getting what. And so, so once we have the invoice now, or the order, remember we have a quantity here that we have a problem with, and so there's a couple of ways that we can fix that. So I've got these 20 that are on back order because I only had 18 and the customer didn't want pieces, they want it all. So I'm just going to put all 20 on back order, and I'm going to go get the 20. Plus I don't want to sell out of the 18 because I could have somebody call this afternoon or tomorrow that wants some, and I don't want to give all my quantity out. And so one thing I could do is I can take action on this, and I can go into the purchase option, and I can go buy those 20 right now. Right off my sales order or my invoice, I can go purchase the 20. And so here we look back to my item. We know who my vendor is, and so we saw that set up on the vendor, or on the item card rather, and we know, of course, I could change that. So if I said, well, no, I know that's where I normally get it, but I know that they're out, and so I'm going to find somebody else. And so, you know, I could go pick another vendor if I wanted to. I'm having it drop shipped, so which may be wise in this case, since you know, customer's not going to get anything from me, but I can change the shipping, and so they're not in a big hurry, and let's not cost too much, so I'm just going to change it to ground. And then here's where the PIO system now is saying it's going to buy the 20 for this particular order, and of course these will be earmarked for this order. And so the system won't see that, oh, there's 20 on order, we have plenty. No, because they're already spoken for, so we're still only 18 available and nothing on order technically. And so, because these are already for someone else. And so I could say, well, you know, I'm gonna sneak another 5 in there. I know I need 20 for this order, but while I'm buying, I'm just going to go ahead and buy another 5. And then maybe because there's a quantity break there, I get this for maybe 109 or something. And so I can make any edits to the system here that I like, and then ultimately I can generate the purchase order right from this window. And so this just tells me that the PO is going to be hooked to this customer order, so that's how we know that they're spoken for, or at least 20 of them are spoken for, and I will have 5 that are now available to go on the shelf. And so if I click generate, that'll generate a purchase order, and then I just get that out to my vendor, and whether I email that or fax it or mail it or call it in or whatever it might be. And so that'll create a Dynamics GP purchase order in the system. And so that's one way that we can buy just kind of one-offs for an individual order or an invoice that might be calling for a shortage here to be filled. So I'm just going to cancel this and back out of it, and so my 20 then will stay on back order with no purchasing in sight. And so there it is. So still got 20 on back order, and I haven't done a PO yet because I just canceled that. And so let's go ahead and just close out of the sales system here, and we'll flip over to purchasing. And then the other option to purchase is what we call the PIO Generator, and the PIO Generator will look at all of our quantity, all of our stock levels, and it will suggest buys based on those rules we set up. Now remember, I had an order up to a quantity of 75. I had 50 in as my order point, so whenever I drop below 50, I need PIO Generator to suggest purchasing. As long as I have 50 or more, I feel like I'm fine and don't need to buy. But 75, and I have 18 available, and so a few minutes ago I said if we ran the PIO Generator right now, we would get a suggestion of 57, or we should. So 75 minus the 18 that I have available. Well, that was before we looked at order 2236. So now order 2236 is saying that we need 20 because I've got 20 on back order. So really I need to get those 20 because I didn't do the purchase order. I canceled the one that we were looking at a minute ago where I could do the PO right from the sales order. So I canceled that. So I need that 20, plus I still need to get up to 75. So 75 minus the 18 that I have on hand or available is 57, and I need 20 more for order 2236. So really I need to buy 77 if I run the PIO Generator, and so we'll see if my math is right here in a minute. And so here we can pick different items, you know, if we want to pick groups of items, if we want to do purchase orders for just one or a small number of inventory locations. You see I've got a whole bunch of inventory sites here that I work with or I have product at. I could limit it to that. I could just do my own. So if I'm Terry Adams, the buyer that was assigned to this particular item or warehouse, you know, I could just run things for my own where I'm actually the purchasing agent or the buyer, so that's an option. Or I could look at just POs that might be generated from certain vendors. So if I said, well, just show me vendors in this range, I don't care about anybody else right now. I could look at it that way. Or item classes, and that's just groups of items. So maybe things, you know, AT&T cords. So I just want to buy things from these vendors that fit into this category or class of item, and maybe only those things that Mr. Terry Adams here is involved in, and really Terry's over the South Warehouse. And so, you know, we can put lots of restrictions on this and really hone in on what it is that we want to buy. But I'm going to set all those back, and so then we're going to run the PIO generator here, and we've got some other questions down here, you know, again, if we want to put a buyer on there and so forth, but we'll skip that. So we're going to click suggest, and it suggests three things. The bottom one, you'll notice right away, there's a problem, and so, you know, what do we got going with that? Let me open that up here. Well, my vendor's item number I don't have. I actually don't have a vendor, and so you know, can't really generate a PO unless we know where it comes from. And so I can make the fixes here. So if, you know, if this item comes from that vendor, you'll notice when I tell the system, okay, go get it from this particular vendor, then it clears the error, and I'm good to go. And I can say yes, include that in my my suggested POs here. But let's take a look at the top one. So here's our 2G proc, and I think 77 is what we mathematically worked out. It's 75 that I wanted to order up to. I've got 18 on hand, which leaves me 57 to buy. But then I had that 20 that's on back order from the order we've been looking at, and so 57 in the 20, and that's mathematically how it's suggesting 77. Now I can say, no, we're going into a slow season. I'm not doing 77. I'm only doing 50, and it puts a little visual cue over here saying, hey, you're interrupting the logic here, but that's okay. We're still the people. This is still the machine here, and so you know, I can make any edits to that I want to. Now, suppose that I like everything that's here, and of course I could change pricing just like I could in the other method to do the PO. And at this point, I can generate the purchase orders. Again, get those out to the vendor, and away we go. Then we wait for our product to arrive. And so just to kind of look at just 3 or 4 short things here, just kind of to wrap up, the other options or things that the supply chain system does in Dynamics GP that are somewhat popular, we do stock counts. And so here I've created a stock count and added some items to it. And so we think about cycle counting, where you might go count 20 things in the warehouse every week or every month. You can create unlimited stock counts and have the system tell you and prompt you what's next. Okay, you need to count these 12 things this Friday, and another group of 15 things the next Friday type thing. And so that kind of freezes the quantity, not so you can't work with it, but it freezes the quantity, takes a picture of the quantity in the system, and then of course we can print off our count forms or sheets. And so here, if we said, okay, these 2 items need to be counted by Friday, and we send that out to the warehouse or you know, email that over to our floor manager type thing, and then they go right in what they actually found. Now I'm showing the quantity here. That's an option. Some people don't. They don't want them to know what to find. They just want them to go count. And so that's up to you on kind of how you handle that. And so we can cancel that count, but once the count is brought back in, we can go into the stock entry or count entry. We can go in and make any changes. So if there are variances, we can type the numbers they counted in. If they match exactly what we have according to the system, we don't have to do anything. But if they found more or they found less, then this is a kind of way to mass adjust the inventory on hand. And of course we can set up reason codes for that. On, you know, physical count adjustment is just one I created, or shortage. That's not a good thing in inventory, but it sometimes happens. And so, and then where in the GL, where do we want these variances or these differences posted? Well, typically they get expensed off if we don't have the product. And so, So that's a pretty popular thing. There's price list utilities, so if you want to change pricing from time to time, there's several wizards here that you can use to go through and mass update prices. A lot of folks use that, where of course you can always import prices from vendors, and lots of people do that too. But if you're just going to go across the board and do a 5% price increase on retail, you know, you can use the wizard to kind of handle some of that. Sometimes you're looking to see what exactly has happened to a particular item, and so here we'll bring up my green phone, and I could set it by different warehouse. Of course, all mine is mostly in the warehouse location, but here it shows every single transaction for this item. So every receipt, every sale transaction, and of course sale is quantity out, receiving is quantity in. If there was an adjustment, maybe we had a shortage, here's an adjustment where I found 10 I didn't know I had, so they were maybe they were in the wrong bin or something, and so I just had to go adjust those into the system and get those into the quantity. And so this is a real helpful way to reconcile, you know, how is GP coming up with the quantity that it says. In this case, it's you know, I've got 30 on hand, 16 allocated, and 14 available. If I go to my 2G item, remember we had 20 on hand, 2 allocated, and 18. And so, you know, all of the history of that item is right there in one place for you. You can do available to promise, and so if we have, I'm using this 100 XLG because it has more history in it, and so out of my warehouse. And so here's all the pending transactions. We see that I have 418 really available, and I've got 399 on a PO that's been received but not yet posted. So those are in the warehouse. It's just the paperwork's not all finalized. And of course, you know, I've got the 30 and the 16 and the 14 that we looked at. And so down here, if somebody calls and says, hey, I need 418 of those, when can I get them? Well, when I click the available date, it's today. My system date, if you remember, is 4/12. And so I've got them all. You can get them today. But what if they say, well, I need 419 of those, when can I get them? Well, I could get 418 today, and so we see up here in the grid, as of today, 4/12, see where the 418 cuts off? And so I can look and get 418 today, but I've got 10 on an inventory adjustment dated 4/21, so I found 10, but I found it in the future, so that's, my dates don't quite line up there, but let's assume that's a PO that's due in from a vendor, and I've got 10 coming on the 21st. Well, the system will always give the most pessimistic available to promise, but I can look up in the grid here and say, oh man, I don't have 419, I can give you 418 today, and then on the 21st I can give you one more. And so you do have the availability of kind of using the ATP, as we call it, system here. And then the very last thing is really, let's take a look at our all-in-one view. And so this shows for a particular item, everything that's been involved with that item moving in and out. And you might say, well, we just looked at that. Well, yes, we did. Microsoft gives us lots of choices. They realize we don't all work and respond to the software the same way. And so they give us sometimes 2 or 3 or 4 different ways to look at the same data. And so we have options. We're not just pigeonholed into the way some developer said, here's how you have to go get it. They like to give us different options and choices. And so that's what you're seeing here is different ways to go look at the same data. And so here we have all of the quantity in, so receipts, quantity moved. So if I had an adjustment, something was moved from one warehouse to another, I would show those here or see those here, and then the quantity out. So these are my invoices and orders and so forth. And so of course you can, you know, the blue, you can drill down and look back on any of these documents that you want to. And so it's just, that's called an all-in-one view, just because it wraps all of the transactions together in one screen. So that's really what I wanted to get through. That was a really quick, at least I feel like that was a really quick overview of inventory, sales order, and purchase order, and some of the things that you can do with these in Dynamics GP. But Ashley, do we have any questions sitting out there in the queue, or if anybody has one, feel free to pop one in there.
Doesn't look like any have been submitted yet, but yeah, like Bryan said, if you have any questions that you'd like him to answer right now, please feel free to submit those in the question box.
And if you have a question, or you might think of a question after we're disconnected here, just feel free to email that into us, and we're happy to answer questions. Or if you want kind of more explanation, happy to get back on a phone call one-on-one with anyone that might have some follow-up, or if you want to talk a little bit at length about how this might work for your particular scenario and so on, more than happy to do that anytime. So if there are none, then I think, Ashley, that's probably all we have today.
Great. Thank you, Bryan, for giving us that great overview of supply chain management in Dynamics GP. If any later questions do come up, please feel free to reach out to Bryan or myself at info@interdynbmi.com.
All right. Thanks, Ash.
Thank you. Have a good day.